Elder John Hughes, and I want to welcome you back to our 12-part summary of our spirituality formation booklets called Guided by the Holy Angels. This conference is about month 8 of the second volume, and month 8 deals with adoration as communion with the holy angels, or adoration in communion with the holy angels. And we want to not only talk about the actual act of adoration, but those elements that flow from it. And so we've broken it down into 4 parts. Our attitude towards God, spiritual worship and truth, walking with God, or walking in God's presence, being in God's presence, and Eucharistic adoration. Okay? Eucharistic adoration, of course, would be the actual act of adoration. Then these other elements are things that flow from adoration, and at the same time make our adoration more intense. So first of all, our attitude with God. So our attitude is an overall attitude of reverence, amazement, and awe, of praise towards God. We acknowledge His omnipotence, His goodness, His omnipotence and goodness as Creator, Redeemer, and Sanctifier. And we also want to acknowledge in this our own nothingness is very important. We want to acknowledge God is God, and we as a creature would be nothing without God. Our adoration then, in this sense, this attitude should be our first attitude. And the angels teach us something very important about our adoration with God. And one of the things that the angels teach us is to adore God in communion, as a community, because the angels adore God as a community, and they teach us to adore God as a community. And this is an important attitude because we don't want to have an individual attitude of just me and God and forget the rest of the world. No, charity is friendship. It is about a relationship with God and a relationship with our brothers and sisters, so that guardian angels help us to develop the attitude of wanting to be in communion with our brothers and sisters in adoring God, loving our brothers and sisters with God. This attitude of the angels, adoring in community. And the angels also bring our adoration before God. We can think of how Saint Raphael brought the prayers of Tobias and Sarah before the throne of God in the book of Tobias. Well, in the same way, our guardian angel brings our adoration to God. And this can help us recognize in our attitude towards God our humble dependence upon our guardian angel and the angels in bringing our prayers to God. Next up, spiritual worship. Adoration leads to spiritual worship, and it also is deepened by spiritual worship. And friendship with the angels then has at its center this spiritual worship, adoration, and then this celebration, spiritual worship of God. Adoration deepens when our life becomes a liturgy of praise. And what does that mean? Well, that means spiritual worship and truth. It means when we develop the habit of doing everything for the sake of pleasing God. Our motivation changes with adoration. Instead of doing things for other motives, we grow and develop and get into the habitual form of doing everything to please God. That's charity, that's love. And that's what the Holy Guardian Angels help us to do. Now, when we do that, we are doing acts of spiritual worship and truth. When we go to work, and our motivation to go to work is to please God, well, our work becomes an act of worship towards God. When we are back home with our families, having dinner, spending time with our wives and our children, this time we spend with them. When we do it to please God, for the love of God, that becomes spiritual worship. Okay. This deepens our adoration. And this is, spiritual worship and truth. And the angels help us also, with regard to this spiritual worship and truth, to see God in others, to see God's glory in others. Because when we see God's glory in others, that helps us to serve them, spend time with them in order to please God. And then, of course, it becomes spiritual worship. And so that's what and the angels help us in that when they help us to see God's glory in other people. And why? Because it helps us to make that act for the sake of pleasing God. Next up, walking with God, being in the presence of God. Well, adoration helps us to walk in the presence of God, and the guardian angel helps us to walk in the presence of God. Together with the guardian angels, we walk with God. And this is just something that the angels help us to do, to stay in the presence of God throughout the day. And of course, it's impossible to always be in the presence of God. We know that. But the angels, what they can help us do is to stay in the present moment. Very important. So we stay focused on where we're at in the present moment. And that helps us to live life much more fully. And it also helps us to live in the presence of God. What it means is we don't worry about the past. We don't worry about the future. And we also try to prevent ourselves as much as possible from daydreaming. From daydreaming. And we keep ourselves in the present moment. And then when we're focusing on our work, we focus on our work. When we're focusing on a relationship that we're having with someone, a talk, whatever, we're focusing on that. When we have leisure time, we're focusing on our leisure time. And in all these ways, we learn to stay in the present moment. And that helps us to stay in the presence of God, because when we are more focused, more reflected, that gives us time, when we're not doing other things, to be just with God. Whether it be at the office, whether it be in an adoration shop, whether it be in the family room, or the living room, or the kitchen, wherever we are, we can find ourselves taking precious moments to just talk with God, to tell God we love Him, to tell Him how much we are thankful and we believe and trust in Him. A way of walking with God flows from adoration, and it also makes our adoration more intense with the holy angels. Lastly, we want to talk about Eucharistic adoration, the very act of adoring God, praising God. One of the ways we do this is through a holy hour. Now, a holy hour is something that is very pleasing to Jesus. A holy hour makes Jesus very happy. And why? Well, St. John Paul II tells us why, because he says holy hours, adoration before the Blessed Sacrament, is something that's very important in our day for the Church and for the world. St. John Paul II says adoration before the Blessed Sacrament is very important for the Church and for the world. And therefore, a holy hour of adoration for the Blessed Sacrament is something that's very pleasing to Jesus. It makes Jesus very happy. And so, the work of the holy angels, the members that are formed in adoration, wanting to spend time in spiritual communion with Jesus in the Blessed Sacrament, in silent adoration with Jesus before the Blessed Sacrament, and heartfelt love before the Blessed Sacrament. And the holy angels encourage work of the holy angel members to visit the Blessed Sacrament as much as possible. If it is possible to make an adoration hour daily, for some older people in the work of holy angels, it is, and they do, and they love it, and that's great, then do it. But of course, as much as possible, for younger people, for younger members who have work, family, it might not be so possible, but at the same time, we should strive to visit the Blessed Sacrament as much as possible. And at the work of holy angels, we form our members to cultivate this attitude in adoration. And so that's the four parts of our talk this month on adoration and communion with the holy angels, which is a brief summary of month 8, which is a 30-day meditation on adoration. So I'd like to thank you for your time and your attention, and God bless you.